All right, AP World History students, so here we are. It's just a few days before the national exam, and I want to finish with some reflections. And I want to tell you right now that these reflections go a little bit beyond the national exam. In a typical year, we would have taken the test, and then we have time to kind of come back after the test and process together and kind of reframe everything. And I have an opportunity to kind of send students out the door reminding us of the bigger picture, to just stop and reflect and take a step back and think about where we've been at and what we've been up to, and then what are we going to take with us. Allow me to begin by just saying, awesome job. Amazing. I'm aware that I've asked you to do more than any other teacher has asked you to do. And in some ways I've been more like, maybe like a coach that has been trying to teach you some skills and then try to really push you with those to see how far you can go with it. And it's safe to say that whether you guys, your success goes beyond your wildest dreams on Thursday, or whether it is a struggle, wherever you're at on Thursday, the change and the growth that you have experienced this year as a result of taking AP World History is change you are taking with you and that nobody will be able to take away from you. You are better, stronger students and people for what you've done in this course. All right? Know that. Hold on to that. On Thursday, whether you're basking in the glow of glory or whether you're like in having cold sweats all of a sudden, right? Regardless of what happens there, I want you to just know that you have grown. And you've grown in the way that growth happens best, through hard work, right? And learning to be diligent and persevere through this. You should be proud of that, young men and women. I'm proud of you for the work you've done. But what's interesting and what's meaningful for me is that I believe this course has operated on different levels or wavelengths. And at the bottom of this image here, you see this path marked out in front of us, and that says grades. And that's where we've been at for a while now, especially as we've been focused on getting ready for this national exam, right? I'm trying to set the path up in front of you and say, follow these dotted lines, stay on the road, keep moving, and down that road, I believe you'll find grades, right? And I believe you'll find grades and numbers that are going to be good for you and that you're going to like, right? Grades are important. They're an important piece of learning. Your grades have literal cash value, right? Like you can get scholarships based on grades, or like doing well on this national exam can help you not have to take certain classes in college. That's all good stuff. That's all good stuff. All right, it's very real, and I want success for that. I want success in that for you. I'd be a lousy AP World History teacher if I said, oh, come on, grades. It's just grades, right? No. It's very real and very important. But if we keep our eyes down and we're only focused on grades, we miss everything else. And God did not put us in this world that we might have, Christ did not come that we might have grades and grades abundant. There are bigger things going on here, and I would ask you, where are your eyes? Right? As you proceed down this path, the whole idea in a course like this is to take in the incredible vista, the incredible views of what is in our human story. Unlike the grades, which have value, but frankly, in a year or two, that value is diminished or gone, the value of like learning more about us and the human story, that only grows over time, right? That will blossom in terms of your worldview and how you understand the world and how you see your neighbor. Beyond even that is, what is God at work doing here? What is God up to? What is God's story in this? And then what role am I invited to play in this? Whether you want to look here or not, I want to say there is a bigger picture of what has been happening this year. And when we are looking toward, if we get too stuck focused on our goals for this week, we lose sight of our goals for the next 50 years of your life. Or we lose sight of our goals for eternity. Don't just keep putting one foot in front of the next one. Grades, and become this. Don't live in a grades treadmill. Don't do that to yourself. Learn to stop and look up and take it in and wonder. I use this image, this image hung in our classroom all year, right? And part of the idea here, part of the visual was just that, like, sometimes in our AP World course, we would zoom way into one little brush stroke, right? And we would just be studying one specific place or one specific moment or one specific instance. But then it said, the point in this class isn't really to understand all the individual brush strokes. The point is to sort of step back and take it all in, right? And learn to kind of understand history that way on the macro level. This is understanding that human story. There are lots of good reasons to study history, but one of my favorites is that when you study our history, you look in the mirror. When you study our history, you see humanity not as we wish it would be, or not as like a political theorist hopes it would be, and not as like a novelist perceives it to be. When you study history, you look right up in the mirror, right? And there's no nice photographic filter on it, right? We're just looking at it and what we are and who we are. And I want to ask you, what did you see this year? What's deeper? What has deepened about your understanding of humanity? What aspects of God's story do you see when you look at us? Do you see fallenness? Do you only see fallenness? What aspects of creation have you seen in human behavior this year? This question's not on a test. There are no grades at stake. This is God's story. Studying history in the way that we have, trying to use a framework of God's story and what is He up to, using principles and worldview ideas that are found in the Bible, doing those things does this very, very useful thing for us as learners of history. It helps us not to misplace our hope. You recall this image that my daughter drew, and I used it to kind of symbolize this notion of like having a hope based on a vision of the world that is idealized or not real, right? Based on a vision of humanity that is not in line with the Bible and not really in line with God's story, right? And how the world works and what God is up to in it, right? And when we don't understand those things correctly, then we can get our hope misplaced. Then we can place our hope in, a utopian philosophy, or we can place our hope in politics, or even worse, in politicians. Christians do this. Christians today do this. We all fall prey to this. I would contend, though, that studying history, and studying history specifically in a biblical context, can help inoculate you, all right? It just sort of prevents you from falling for some of that stuff. And that doesn't mean, being a Christian who appreciates history does not mean that we're someone that's like, yeah, well, the world is whatever, going to hell in a handbasket and whatever. That's not God's story at all. It's not God's story that we be cynics. That's not what we're invited into. We also just need to be very careful about where our hope is, young man and young woman. Where is your hope? I'd like to finish with my own deep hope. I don't teach this course to give out grades. I don't teach this course in hopes that my students get great grades, or at least that's not the limit of my own hope. Ultimately, the thing that keeps me coming back and the thing that keeps me hard at work is the hope that through the work we do here, that we can help send a certain type of person out into the world. So if you'd let me just read this one last time to you, and if you would just receive this. May AP World students be people who fathom the world's complexity and see God's story in that complexity. The world is not a simple place. Guys, you're going to have people, politicians, people on social media, whatever, who are going to try and sell you something by telling you that the world is simple and they've got a simple solution to that. And I will just say, the God we worship is not simple. The faith we've inherited is not simple. The world that God created is not simple. Right? It's complex. And we need to be people who lean into that and who aren't afraid of it. You're at a stage in life where you're ready to get off the baby food, right? And you're ready to start dealing with the world on its own terms. And that is really frightening for a lot of people, especially as they start to learn that the world isn't necessarily black and white. That doesn't mean we need to be cynics and moral relativists, because that's not God's story at all. But we just need to be a people who throw our arms around the complexity and wrestle with it and grapple with it. That's what I want for you. The world, our own Christian faith, needs people who are ready to do that and ready to say, God is there in the complexity. I look for the markings of creation. I can spot evidence of the fall. I place my hope in God's redemption and God's redemption alone. But I know that God has invited me into restoration. And like the little kid shoveling the snow with Dad in the driveway, I know that I can't do that work myself. And I'm going to fall on my face, but God wants me out there in the driveway with him. And I want to be out there with him. And I hope that you are students who want that as well. And what do you know? We've hit the end here. And that's when I turn it around and say, you know, we're really at the starting line. Now I put my hand on your back and say, you can do this. You can do whatever you got in front of you for 11th grade. Anything that's in front of you, you can handle this, guys. You can do this. It's been my honor to be your teacher this year. Thank you for receiving instruction from me. Thank you for letting me push you. God bless you guys. All right? Stay safe. Have a wonderful summer. And I look forward to seeing you again next year.